Hi, my name is Erica Mahonis, and this is my demonstration of knowledge. Today I'm going to be talking about disability in the entertainment industry. I'm going to be going over a little bit of history. Then I'm going to be talking about some harmful tropes surrounding disability in the media. And then I'm even going to be talking about some of my favorite films and TV shows that feature disability. To start out, I'm going to give a little bit of background. In 1897, there was a French film released which translates to The False Cripple, and it was about a street beggar who faked a disability to get sympathy from the people that would give him honey. And this just shows how much, there were a lot of misconceptions surrounding disability and mistrust towards those who were disabled, believing disabled people were deceitful or just bad people, which we're going to get into later. That's one of the harmful tropes. And that's one of the first films on record that's about disability. I'm not saying that was the first film by any means, but as far as I could tell, on record, that was the first film about disability. So hopefully we have nowhere but up to go from here. There's a whole list of tropes about disability. Scholars have made lists. Disability activists have made lists. I've made lists. I'm not going to be able to go over every single trope in this video, number one, because I don't know every single trope that exists, and number two, some of the tropes bleed into each other a little bit, so it would feel redundant if I went over them. So the first trope I am going to go over is that disabled people are pitiable and pathetic. A good example of this is Tiny Tim from A Christmas Carol. I'm sure most people have at least heard of A Christmas Carol. Many people may have seen one of the movie adaptations, or they may have seen it in theater, or maybe even you read A Christmas Carol. Tiny Tim is the boy who Scrooge hired his father, and Scrooge does not want to give him holiday pay. I believe that's how this story goes. Correct me if I'm wrong. But, so Scrooge doesn't want to give Tiny Tim's father pay, but then when the ghosts of Christmas, past, present, and future visit Scrooge, he is shown that Tiny Tim will die because his family didn't have enough money to support him. So, in effect, Tiny Tim serves to be Scrooge's character development. He is a plot device to make Scrooge become a better person. And that's one of the issues with the pitiable trope. Of course, it's not the only issue. Disabled people are not pitiable just for being disabled. The next trope I'm going to be talking about today is the super crip. Now, this one bleeds into the savant a lot. The super crip is someone who either overcomes their disability or they can not overcome it, but they have some sort of a, not necessarily like a supernatural power, but they may be very strong or very intelligent or just something to make up for their disability. A good example of this one is the titular character in Forrest Gump. In the beginning, we see Forrest literally running off his leg braces. Now that obviously is not realistic. I mean, most of the movie is not meant to be realistic. But the issue with that is, why did Forrest have to overcome his disability to go on to do great things? Can't someone just be disabled and not just be a part of their identity? According to this trope, no, they cannot. The next one I'm going to be going over is that disabled people are sinister or evil. Now, this is something I kind of touched on in the beginning, but a good example of this is, well, a lot of Marvel movies have villains that are disabled, or I don't like this word, but disfigured. We have Doc Ock from one of the Spider-Man movies. I cannot recall which one, but if you're a big Spider-Man fan, I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. Then also I think his name is Ulysses, and he is in the Black Panther, which is one of my favorite superhero movies. But we find out in the movie that he is an amputee. And the reason this is harmful is, a lot of times, number one, it just makes disabled people seem like they're inherently evil, which is not true. And number two, if we are to have a disabled character who may not be the best person, we should really delve into their backstory. Like, does ableism play into this? Is ableism why? Is that part of their villain arc? Or are we just gonna pretend this is an individual issue and not a bigger societal issue? And the next trope I'm gonna go over is the better off dead trope. Now, a few years ago, well, by now it's been more than a few years since this film came out, but Before You, Will Trainer, after his accident, he becomes very depressed, and so his parents hire a personal care attendant who just so happens to be a beautiful woman, partially because they're just trying to set him up with her, but that's a whole other issue to this movie. I can make a whole video just on that. But anyway, Will meets this girl, Louisa, and they connect, and blah blah blah. But in the end, he opts for assisted suicide because he fears that he will hold Louisa back since he is a quadriplegic. Disabled people are not burdens. Disabled people are not better off dead. Number one, we deserve the same mental health services that able-bodied people receive. And the reason I say able-bodied is I realize that mental health disorders are considered disabilities, but right now I'm talking about physical disability in this movie and how his mental health is ignored and not taken seriously because he has a physical disability. People just assume that, well, of course physically disabled people are depressed. Isn't that life just depressing on its own? No, not necessarily. Disabled people need access to services just like anybody else, and sometimes we struggle with our mental health, and that is okay, but that does not mean that we are better off dead. And another one is the trope that people who are disabled are unable to live a successful life. An example of this is The Shape of Water. The character who Sally Hawkins plays, I'm sorry, I don't remember the character's name, but she works at this scientific facility where they have some type of a sea monster in an aquarium, and she's deaf, and her life is very boring and very empty because she cannot communicate with the hearing world. So she falls in love with this sea monster, and they run away together and they live underwater because since she's deaf, she's unable to live a successful life among other people, which is ridiculous and problematic. And it's a shame because I really like Guillermo del Toro. But I'm not happy about that movie, and I never will be. But anyway, now I'm gonna go into some of my favorite films about disability. The obvious one, which is Crip Camp, which came out on Netflix in 2020. It is about the disability rights movement of the 1970s and the passage of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. That's a very good movie. Everybody should watch it. Yeah. Next, I really like, there's an episode of 21 Jump Street called Unfinished Business, and it has Jerry Jewell as a guest star, and she plays a cop who has sustained a traumatic brain injury. Now, Jerry Jewell in real life has cerebral palsy, which is the disability I also happen to have, and the episode explores ableism and like ableism in the workplace, and also coming to terms with one's disability. And I just think it was very ahead of its time, especially considering that that episode was released in 1990. Right now, I want to talk a little bit about a phenomenon that has been named ripping up. That is when non-disabled actors play disabled roles. And this is problematic because disabled actors are often not given roles or thought to not be. Maybe you just don't have enough talent. That's not true. Disabled actors can be just as talented as non-disabled actors, and they should be given roles. But some examples of this are Kevin McHale in Glee, which I know recently he has spoken out against that and said if they do a reboot of Glee, he will not participate because as a non-disabled man, he feels uncomfortable playing a character who uses a wheelchair, which is like, it's about time that you've acknowledged that. So, some other examples are in Me Before You. The actor who played Will Traynor is not disabled in real life. Now, a lot of people argue, well, if a character acquires a disability in the film, should a disabled actor play that character? My thought has always been, why not? There's so much we can do with CGI, with camera angles, with writing. There's so much we can do where we can get around that. So I don't see why that would prevent a disabled actor from being cast. I'm making this video as someone who wants to go into the entertainment industry, and I want it to be more accessible, and I want there to be better representation of disabled people on screen. And that is it for what I have to say today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.